editing, layout and design, and then through all that path toward publishing. So we got it published. I'm sure it was all an experience for all of us, both for the author and ourselves. But it is very important to note that at the end of the day, what is very beautiful about the book is that at least visually, you know, it's of high quality. And I would like to introduce 3 people, other than the author, who have really participated in it. Probably the author will do that later, but for from the publisher's perspective, it's important you note that a book is not only about what is written inside, it's all about the rest of the material, particularly the editing and the designing and layouts. So I would like to introduce 2 of our staff who are yet interns. So Adam Nyang, can you stand up? By the way, Adam Nyang is also an author who has already published 2 books. She's right at the back there. And she is there to, she was one of those who did the first reading of the book before it was done again by Professor Mamadou Sala. And then we have Ensa Janko, who is a designer who is also sitting at the back, who was the one selling the books, who also did the layouts and the cover design. But the cover image is actually done by someone that Alaji Seydi Barrow contacted personally and who all of us know. Mr. Benny Williams, please, can you stand up? I'm sure it will be an insult to call him Tubab, by the way. Remember, he's as Gambian as me and you. So be careful. If you talk to him and think that he's a Tubab, you'll be disappointed. Okay, that said, it's my honor, therefore, to reiterate our welcome to all of you and thank everyone for coming. Without much ado, I would like to invite Madam Neitafa Sose, who is now going to make you discover The Dictator is Us through a book review. Madam, yes, please.
Do I have to hold the mic as well? Yeah. Good afternoon, or should I say good evening? Hello? Am I audible? Because I can't hear myself. Okay. Thank you, Alaji, for the invite. I had decided to say no, but we'll talk about that. Alaji Barrow's The Dictator is Us is a startlingly fresh, undyed chronicle of life under a dictatorship, culminating in his short stint as head of investigations at the TRRC. I'm surprised that he chose today because it's almost a year to the day that the TRRC report was submitted, and I found that interesting. These 320 pages, I've actually just seen the book today, this copy, and I think you've done a good job. I had the e-version, so I had to do some little tweaking with my page numbers. But the 320 pages captured in 26 chapters is a stark reminder of the enormous suffering of a people under 20 years of dictatorship and the significant sacrifices. This book tries to unlock the slimy, dark, and oftentimes silent terror that we, the Gambian people, had to endure under the dictatorship and serve as a clarion call for each and every one of us to commit to the never again slogan of the TRRC. It is a reminder for us to also commit in many ways through our various platforms to ensure that justice is done in the name of each and every victim of Yahya Jammeh. In a nutshell, The Dictator is Us challenges us to reflect on who we are as a people, for even though Yahya Jammeh was the principal dictator, the dictatorship thrived as many enablers and many dictators helped along the way. This status quo is succinctly captured by Alaji in page 10, where he states that through his interactions with various witnesses, he would come to learn how the APRC dictatorship was birthed, nursed, raised, and sustained by fellow Gambians, While Yahya Jammeh was the linchpin of the 22-year dictatorship, he had many enablers who legislated, promoted, aided, and supported his maladministration and abuse of Gambians. Though Alaji coherently weaves a symbiosis showing a Gambia tempered with the care, courage, empathy, love, selflessness in seeking to protect, safeguard the physical and psychological well-being of friends and neighbors, and sometimes complete strangers, I am convinced that this book is also a sad indictment of our Gambian characteristics of betrayal, of cowardice, of deception, of greed, of hate, lies, wrongdoing, and other negative behavior which led to dispossession, disappearances, killings, robbery, shame, suffering of people mostly in silence. Alaji questions our underlying ideas of justice and our notion of crime and punishment, and hopes that the dictator is us will spur people to take stock of our individual and collective actions and to reflect on the nation we are creating for ourselves and for generations yet unborn. At my level, this hope has been realized. For after having testified at the TRRC and being the daughter of the Commission's Vice Chair, Adelaide Sose, I had taken a personal decision to desist from commenting on anything and everything TRRC, as Gambians have the ability of misquoting and misconstruing, and I did not want the brilliant work of the Commission to be marred by misrepresentations by persons who were so inclined. A position that is also in line with an earlier decision that I made following a short stint as advisor to Demba Ali Jawo as Minister of Information. So it was not a light decision for me to accept to do the review. It was also not a light decision for me to detach myself from Gambian matters, as I had spent my entire youth in a sustained fight against dictatorship and in a quest to bring meaningful change. This change eventually happened in December 2016, when Gambians finally had enough of the human rights abuses, the bullying, the butchery, and the bad boy behavior, and courageously did the needful by voting Yahya Jammeh out of office in December 2016. Having achieved this common objective of ousting the dictator, it would have been nice and consistent to work with like-minded persons to bring about effective change we wanted for the Gambia. Yet, the residual of the bad boy, bad girl behavior indicated that it was best to take a back seat and instead concentrate on restoring my equilibrium, having expended so much of my time, energy, emotional intelligence, and finances in fighting a dictatorship. This decision I had to reverse when Alaji called about a month ago, asking that I review his book. And I said, what book? He said, some sort of memoir on the TRRC. And my initial reaction was no. But can you send me an e-copy? He said yes. I said, I would not want to give the detractors the opportunity to muddy the waters, but let me just read through it. As soon as I saw the title, I was convinced that I would be a fool to say no. This is despite all these things that I have listed, and that I had promised Alaji I would help him to find a reviewer, probably a victim if he needed. I had some apprehensions about reading the book. I wondered, what was there to say? The TRRC was so high profiled. It was in our face, or at least we thought it was. I couldn't be more wrong. Touching on all the stages of the Commission, in particular the coming into being of the TRRC, the Dictator is Us is a timeless testament to how far institution building and maintenance is a major development issue in the Gambia, and further testifies that beyond the visible teamwork, camaraderie, and solidarity, institutions which make an impact in the Gambia are mostly carried along by the steely determination of a few visionary individuals, and the TRRC was no exception. The initial team's dingy offices in the Ministry of Justice, though serious, makes funny reading and resonates with me as it took me to my early days at Moise. The distinctness and linguistic command used to describe people, events, and thoughts enriches brilliant storytelling with clarity. Your experiences of leaving the Gambia for the first time, including your settlement in the US with your family, the feelings of not knowing what to do, going in any and all directions in seeking to assist and help Gambians, victims of the dictator at home, and those who managed to flee resonate well with me, as we had similar experiences. With an extraordinary immediacy, Alaji's stint at the TRRC reveals what motivated him to fight the dictatorship. Even though he lived abroad in the USA, his love for country remained firmly planted in his heart and soul, and I quote, "That made the suffering of the people under the yoke of military dictatorship a constant concern of my life. Information he got about the situation at home greatly pained him to the point that not only standing up and speaking out was not enough. He had to use all and every means necessary to muster to help free the Gambia by joining a group of Gambians who planned to force to remove Yahya Jammeh by power, meaning he had to resign from the US Army in 2013 to participate in the December 30th State House attack. The December 30th attack on the State House, where Jammeh resided at the time, described as ill-fated, is one of the reasons that Alhaji Barrow and his surviving colleagues were given a hero's welcome upon their return. He said, "The sad part of the December 14th incident is when Gambian soldiers who were the main element in the attack ended up betraying the operation by trying to play both sides, thus leading to the loss of some of the men. This illuminates the low level that persons can go to when cowards are confronted with fear." And he quotes again, I quote again, "Even Jammeh himself manifested this cowardice when he fled the country with his family and only returned when he was sure the coup attempt had been repelled by forces loyal to him." Alhaji unearths very early in this book that it had dawned on him that the reality of the change we fought so hard for is an even bigger problem post-Jammeh. The dictator was gone, but the albatross, the status quo, remains. And this captured his attention in a brilliant, direct, simple, and succinct manner that leaves the reader riveted to the narrative. His unforgettable teenager's journey on Friday, July 22nd, 1994. The coup day narration is beautifully lit with all the truth and grace and simplicity of a wonderfully childlike people, focusing on himself, his sister, and his friends' reactions, while the father, Alhaji's father, is more stately and reserved. There is a stark difference between the youthful exuberance of a young Alhaji who recognizes the word coup meant change, and his father's wisdom over youthful perceptions that coups hardly ever bring out the mitigated and promised changes as churned out by the junta leaders' promises of better governance. This brings to mind the African adage that when adults can see what adults can see far sitting down, a young person cannot see standing up. In The Dictator Is Us, Alhaji Barrow has shaped painful, sometimes harrowingly bitter life stories into compelling dramatic narratives. Blending literary scholarship with practical storytelling, Alhaji shares remarkable techniques for finding the essentials of story structure within his TRRC tenure and experiences. Most important, he explains how to treasure the struggles in your past and discover the meaning within those experiences to capture the unique myths at work in your life. It is evident that his empathy and heightened sense of responsibility towards others is probably sharpened by various life and career skills acquired through various roles, in particular while serving within the US Armed Forces. Having spent almost 2 decades studying and working in the US, eventually enlisting in the Army, rising to the rank of captain, Alhaji brought his knowledge, competencies, and skills to the TRRC, building innovation, integration, and imitation into his team of investigators. Emphasizing to the team, I quote, "We would succeed together or fail together." Alhaji introduced the guiding principles and values that was expected of the team. Paramount of these were utmost respect and professionalism. These paid dividends as perpetrators and victims alike, except for a few, reacted positively to the way they were treated at the TRRC. Even though his hiring, when it was announced, caused the ruckus amongst Jammeh supporters who lacked the understanding of his role at the TRRC, but strongly disliked his stance on abuse of Gambians, Alhaji did a brilliant job of setting up the Research and Investigations Directorate, which consisted of 3 separate units: research, investigations, and statement taking, which continued to do top-class work even after he left the TRRC, in spite of resource challenges. It was these units that enabled the Commission lay bare the truth from November 1994, where it all began. Thus begins an intriguing journey for them all, chasing broken dreams of closure for the November 1994 victims, and against all odds for various types of victims and perpetrators. a team that worked tirelessly, inspiring one another as they walked around the often arduous parts of unearthing the selective truth of some to climb the ladder and be successful together. The adage, you can't always get what you want, but if you try sometime, you'll find you get what you need, aptly describes Alaji's first days at the TRRC with dysfunctional, non-existent structures in an amazing story and making the best of what it is that we have given to us. He describes the administration of the commission, meetings, and sometimes unintentional difficulties which made things even more complex for their rather difficult start. But instead of letting it frustrate them, Alaji felt accomplished that not only had they gotten off on a rough start, but that they had overcome the challenges taking off once and for all. The Dictator is Us is a beautiful memoir about the power of determination, communication, and learning, whilst delivery is expected to be instant for those who seek to do good. Outside the TRRC or any other good initiative led and run by decent, good people, we as Gambians are quick to justify and accept and even condone painstakingly irrational behavior and decisions of the bad and the ugly in our society, yet hold the good or who sought to communicate with deficiencies of the TRRC would stoop so low to make up stories of bad conduct amongst its staff. One such incident is described in chapter 20 after an encounter with the junglers, where his altruistic gesture of giving soldiers money for attire is completely misrepresented. They asked me to join them for attire, but I declined. I took out $200, gave it to the soldier brewing the tea, and told him to use it to buy more attire. I got in my car and left. The next day, someone sent me screenshots from an APRC group claiming I paid the junglers to get their attention, to get their testimony. This falsehood made it into one of the tabloids that masquerade as genuine news outlets, an indication of how low journalism had sunk in the Gambia. That really struck home. Gambian social media warriors would go into frustration and rage overdrive over the perceived bad behavior of the few good ones. There were times when I asked myself every question I could think of in frustration when journalists, most times Jame victims at some point in their careers, would go out of their way to seek public validation of their own acceptance of the unacceptable, including the justification of appointments of former key enablers of the Jame regime in the current administration. Alaji asks on page 404. Oh, I'm so sorry. You can't hear me at all? I have to use it close to my mouth. Ah, okay. I'm sorry. All right, I'm sorry. I'll make sure you wouldn't lose out. No, I can't do that. No. Alaji asks on page 404, how different are they from the junglers and NIA agents who killed and maimed in Jammeh's name as they were only protecting their interests? All 26 chapters of The Dictator is Us appeals to different segments of society. It is not possible to speak to all the chapters, but to confirm that indeed The Dictator is Us, I will focus on those ones that I believe bring out our worst characteristics as Gambians by exploring investigative and leadership elements alongside complementary concepts. In chapter 6, Alaji Barrow uses the Ibrahima Chongan testimony to assess and put forward his thoughts on the key security institutions that the TRRC had to work with and their leadership. He describes the stark differences in reception and support accorded him and his team from the SIS NIA leaders and the Inspector General of Police at the time. Contrary to the pushbacks by the SIS leadership, the late IGP Mahmoud Job did not only open doors for Alaji Barrow and his team, but gave his support in the security operations of the TRRC premises, provided personnel, and signed an MOU and assured us, I quote, of his support and asked us to let him know if we needed anything. Similarly, Director of Prisons Ansumana Mane was very helpful and offered the TRRC his full cooperation. It was apparent that, I quote Alaji, it was apparent that Ansumana Mane, like Mahmoud Job, had a very clear conscience with nothing to hide. Further down, chapter 18 covers in detail the role and powers of the NIA and how they maintained a culture of impunity by violating citizens in the name of national security, and Alaji weaves a thoroughly convincing story that through the NIA, Yahya Jammeh engineered a government apparatus that ensured he could freely abuse Gambians and stay in power for as long as he wanted to. In chapter 7, Alhaji Barrow draws attention to Yahya Jammeh's mix of institutions and professions to get what he wanted, with particular focus on how the lawyers also succumbed to Jammeh's caprices and condoned his actions. He argues that the security sector was the visible face of Jammeh's tyranny and the enabling role of lawyers often overlooked. No coup ever succeeds, I quote, without being legalized by lawyers through decrees. In the case of the Gambia, it should be noted, just as senior security personnel quickly surrendered to the AFPRC, the judiciary and many prominent legal practitioners also quickly capitulated and assisted the soldiers in legalizing the coup. Alhaji summarizes the democratic edicts to defend their excesses. I agree. In chapter 9, consolidating power and control, the argument focuses on the hypocrisy of the junta's decrying of nepotism and godfatherism in the early days, not only to end up using it as the hallmark of the Jammeh regime. I quote, "From the beginning, scores of respected Gambians put their integrity aside and lined up to offer their support to the APRC government in various capacities. Many government officials, desperate to hold on to their positions, aligned themselves with Jammeh, which allowed him to further consolidate power. The constant cabinet reshuffles and dismissals and hiring of people in top positions was held like a Damocles sword over them. The less fortunate were not only dismissed, but were imprisoned." Alhaji perfectly outlines how from the day he removed his uniform, Yahya Jammeh exploited religion as the most important tool for controlling people's minds. He wore flowing robes and carried a sword, prayer beads, and what he claimed was a Quran whenever he appeared in public. People fell for this, and he ended up by having many Islamic titles conferred on him, including Sheikh and Nasiruddin. When the chair of the Supreme Islamic Council was asked about the title, he said that no person had done more for Islam in the Gambia than Yahya Jammeh had done. Shameless. The dangerous links between Jammeh's self-portrayal as Allah's chosen and his accountability to Gambians was more accentuated by the stamp of approval of religious leaders, few of whom dared to give an alternative picture or to face Jammeh to tell him the truth. Face to face, he quotes, I quote, "except for Bishop Hanafal, who courageously told Jammeh that very uncomfortable truth at a religious gathering in State House and lived to tell the story." Chapter 15 touches on the issue that mostly defines who I am. Alhaji's coherent chronology, stating from the initial propaganda machinery and culminating in the TRRC team on attacks on freedom of expression, deals with enforced disappearances, murder, arson attacks, torture, illegal detentions, and shutting down of media houses. The attacks against persons who accessed the online media, especially Freedom newspaper, was deadly. The Dictator is us affirms, I quote, that not only was the media fraternity as an institution one of the first casualties of the Jammeh dictatorship, but media practitioners as individuals also suffered as much, if not more, than any other class of people or professional group in the Gambia. Several decrees were passed by the Ministry of Justice that were designed to silence the media. One such order was Decree Number 4, which banned the very expression of political ideas, which was passed on August 19, 1994, less than a month after the APRC seized power. Alhaji touches on the exile of many journalists, including myself, for fear that they would experience the same fate as Chief Ibrahim Amane, who had disappeared, or Deida Haidara, who was killed. It makes sad reading to know of the poor quality of testimonies received, mistrust amongst the media fraternity, but more importantly for me was the absence of the high caliber, good quality Gambian journalists and journalism, Gambians and non-Gambians who, when there was no one, prior to the lifting of the ban on political parties, served as fodder for Jammeh's amateurism and bullying tactics. The reference to the GPU Secretary General Sekou Jammeh's beautiful documentation of the pains and misery inflicted on the Gambian media is encouraging, but I was saddened by the fact that some of those key actors victims and heroes in their own right, were right there on the ground and could not have told their own stories. In chapter 16, the focus on the United Democratic Party highlighted Jammeh's ethnic-based fear of the UDP, and even used some Mandinkas to abuse their own group. It did not stop at verbal abuse, but was extended to violent physical attacks, as in Denton Bridge 1996, Fast Njaga Choi 2015, Westfield 2016, arbitrary arrests and detention and torture, rape, enforced disappearances and killings. Several members of the UDP would pay a price, I quote, for their party affiliation, including Solo Sandeng, who in 2016 paid the ultimate price at the hands of the Jammeh security personnel when he led a peaceful protest to demand electoral reforms. The rights violations against the UDP also include systematic job discrimination, denial of opportunities for public service, and castigation of the UDP by many Gambians as a violent party. Jammeh's desire to prevail at all costs drove him and his followers to engage in destructive behavior against the UDP, which has persisted post-Jammeh. The negative propaganda against the UDP has led to its losing successive elections, despite the large numbers of people who attend their rallies. In spite of the continued efforts by the party to debunk the claims that they are a Mandinka party who are out to destroy the country, the myth has sustained and has permeated at all levels of Gambian society. The imaginary enemy has become so real to the majority of Gambians who believe that if the UDP win the presidential elections, the country would be Mandinkanized and all other ethnic groups would lose their status in society. On the exhumation of the November 11 soldiers, Alaji's detailed explanation of their efforts, the TRRC's efforts at seeking expert support for expertise in criminal investigations and assistance in exhumations is appropriate, as across the board, the Commission was criticized by many for its handling of the exhumations of the remains of the November 11 victims. We can sense his frustration in trying to manage at efforts to avoid the noise and to keep focused in recounting the exhumation exercises at Yundum Barracks and other sites. I quote, "The presence of the families nearby the exhumed remains posed difficulties, as some sobbed so uncontrollably while being comforted by relatives. One woman was particularly upset and had to be restrained so she would not hurt herself as she flung herself to the ground. For me, it was the piercing scream of a young lady whose father was among those executed that was the hardest to bear. She kept calling out her father's name and talking to him as if he could hear her. She fell onto the dirt, and we had to help her up and take her to a vehicle. Many of us were in tears. I would go home with the voice of that young lady ringing in my ears. Tears well up even as I write this." Painful as these scenes were, Alaji has inextricably linked humor, perhaps to make the story easier to digest. He names his struggles at digging, and I laughed out loud when he described how after about 10 minutes or so, he would gladly be waiting for Jali Senghor or one of the team members to come to his rescue. Alaji described things the way that someone who was not there could see the scene. This chapter is also a brilliant showcase of the promise of working with capable teams and inspiring visionaries, where the uppermost factors in our investigative process and the subsequent hearings. To that end, a task force was set up consisting of various units. Barrow further states that patronage, repression, nationalism, ethnic favoritism, desire for expensive items, and love for a certain type of woman are characteristics that most dictators share. While some of these traits are aimed at controlling the citizenry, others stem from the psychology of unmet needs these men only realized when they had power. He used beauty pageants to describe how Yahya Jammeh saw women to be at the beck and call of men like him, who feel entitled as a benefactor to women, and who feel that issues of women's equality are Western ideas. To conclude, the dictator is us. It's twisting, turning, heartbreaking, and raises provocative moral questions. This is the kind of book you simply can't put down, even when you realize you don't want to see it end. Indeed, the cultural and ethnic mixing in the Gambia means that each family has a strain in all the other regions. The savanna, the forest, the coasts of the Atlantic Ocean, the banks of the River Gambia and that in many respects our country resembles a sort of spider's web, where the surname cheerfully plays with the ethnic categorization that feed the identity and community folds. In the Gambia, if the name more or less identifies and distinguishes social groups, it is less to confine or to compartmentalize in introverted sets. Rather, it promotes circles of kinship, affinities, and solidarity, defying sociocultural and religious barriers. Though specifically focused on his time at the TRRC, Alaji has managed to depict how thousands of Gambians live in the most absolute destitution without any hope. The country does not offer enough. The members of the ruling majority see the Gambia as a haven of peace and gentleness thanks to their leader, whom they consider to be infallible and endowed with all possible powers, and the opposition for its part sticks to its fundamentals, the electoral register and ballot transparency. Yet, the harrowing narratives in The Dictator Is Us leaves one wondering whether the basis of our call, joking cousinhood, a sacred social practice, which founds the legendary living together because it is a means of relaxation, cohesion, or social reconciliation, died a slow natural death under the dictatorship. Alaji's story of learning and discovery through his TRRC journey was very touching to me, since it is similar to experiences that I knew and I encountered when I met, during the course of my activism, former victims and enablers of the Jammeh regime. How he was able to unpackage these complex narratives, contributing to TRRC recounting language, was very interesting to read about, since myself, like many others, were just privy to the packaged version, some of which were tough enough to make me nauseous for days on end. Knowing that they had to experience and accept with unmistakable understanding that victims and perpetrators alike were to be treated with respect, choosing to accept that they would not be forced to testify to enable us Gambians collectively and publicly discover together the brute and brutal mechanisms to which Jammeh and his cohorts from 1994 to 2017 in a method of communicating that had never been done before is fascinating pedagogy. And yes, Alaji, I do concur. The dictator is us, and that he is still us, as you perfectly capture in the 2020 arrest of Mahdi Jabate. When the police told him that he was not under arrest, he asked to leave, but they stopped him, saying they needed clearance from the top. The top used to mean the dictator Yahya Jammeh, but this occurred more than 3 years after Jammeh fled into exile. It was a painful reminder that the tyrant might have left, but his apparatus of abuse and the mindset that sustained it was still alive and well in the Gambia. I also concur when you state that it must be pointed out that many of these special interest groups did not necessarily disappear with the fall of the dictatorship. More importantly, if their needs are not addressed, they may calcify into grievances that will likely contribute to further divisions within the nation, increasing the potential for conflict. Harrowing as Chapter 26 on enforced disappearance is, and thought-provoking as the epilogue on Alaji's departure from the TRRC, for me, Chapter 25 on sexual and gender-based violence concludes with a cliffhanger ending that secures anticipation for Book 2. It leaves us with as many unanswered questions as possible. Yes, it creates an unfulfilled need for me to look at psychosocial mechanisms, and I do sincerely hope that the sequel will give an equally relevant, deep, emotional, and sometimes hilarious testimony to the grueling behind-the-scenes work at the TRRC. Thank you. Oopsie. Come.
Thank you. Oh, yeah, compared to you now, my voice is like what? Thank you very much, Neitafa Sose. That was really quite an explicit review of the book. I'm sure reviewing a book of more than 300 pages is not very easy. And for many who don't know, you need to read, reread, check again, review, verify before you get to that point. So thank you so much for a good job. I'm sure Alaji will have his word at the later. I would like to welcome on the high table Madam Nene MC Cham. I'm sure you already recognize her. She is the guest who is expected to do the book launch today. So we will have her do her book launch statement later. She's welcome. Thank you very much, Madam Cham, for coming. We have entertainment, we did promise you. So we will probably take a break, just a very quick one, because we don't want this book launch to be long, and invite Pabobo Jobate to strike the strings of the kora and entertain us. Pabobo, I know you are here, so please, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum albe konton ntelom Pabobo Jobate kabo Brikama kontan bake kana mabe book launching to jang. Yeah, so I'm very happy also ka kora fenam bi, you know, ka na mabe nyin lumoto bi ndel fana mo mol konolti mi yalon ko nene borta janna mfindita banda. So really I appreciate to be here today. So mbe julo min fela na worom respecti horomo kumayata bakere no mata position jumale be bulu alinga nyo bunya bawo bibe dulado bi sama dole be tarraje. So ite yake nyami nimbe yake o nyama dunia ta bisila. So alinga hakilo tu nyoto o julo mulam respecti nyo horoma kodi ala baraka. Allah la respect, respect. Respect, respect. Tonya respect, Aladino lang wole koita respect. Horomo kubati niaje mangani horomo la de duna niaje mangani horomo la de dunia alimalo ngasemboro warda. Sitam fole, namine kolo siti kolkono, bunya nyontewo ala, respect. R-E-S, P-E-C-T, respect. R-E-S, P-E-C-T, horoma, bunya balemu horoma. Aladino la respect, Tonya kumo, hey, ala fonyo ye, horma moko baleti, Aladino lang wole koita respect. Ay punya le dinade alaji sedi baro, punya mukubadi, ay dunia sidi dunia nganya de alaji Gambia janyu ngomam kuyala mumege Hormo mukubati de indunia. Fudu nyomalu, ta nyomalu ngonyo horoma. Bunya le bunya. Bunya mukubaleti. Altalla fam ko nyo bunya de ngonyo horoma. Respect. Respect. R-E-S. Ko. Bunya diala respect. Tonya kumo. Hey. Ala fonyo ye respect. Bunya bale mu respect. Ala dinyo la. Horma muku baleti. Ala fonyo ye respect. Respect. Mangani bunya la de dunia alimano asembora warzanti alinganyo bunya muna horomo mukubati respect. Yeah. Allah baraka. Thank you.
So thank you so much. I mean, we would have loved to have you all on the show, but it's still too late. Thank you. We will end up the show, and when there's time, we will still have you on the ground. And by the way, we also have the other artists, I believe, here too. Let me just say that the artists that are invited here also have significance to the program. Remember, Pabobo Jobate was also a victim who had to leave this country at some point on self-exile until after the regime change. So you can imagine the emotions he has to have in playing his, his song. Anyway, thank you very much, Pabobo. We now get quickly to one of the main items of the agenda. That is the book launch statement by Nene MC Cham. We will now invite her to take the floor and quickly run us through her impression and also officially declare the book launched. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon to you all. My learned senior, Chairman of the Human Rights Commission, Alaji Seidi Barrow, my sister, Data Sose, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon again. President of the Gambia Bar Association, I see at the back, Mr. Salutar.
Dictator is us. Mr. Chairman, I next allow to say for the first time in February 2019, when he
visited home to interview my father in preparation for his testimony before the TRRC. Since then, I have grown to have a great deal of respect and admiration for him, particularly in the past couple of years after his TRRC assignment. I admire his courage, his dedication to duty, hard work, steadfastness, patriotism, great sense of responsibility, and a clear vision of what he wants. He's an acclaimed writer whose articles most of the time speaks my mind. I somehow find it comforting feeling that he also speaks for me. When Alhaji sent me the flyer for the launching of this book, and I saw the title of the book, which in itself, I must admit, is mouth-watering, I told him I anticipated some deep soul-searching. I was not disappointed. Alhaji is a straight shooter, if you excuse the pun. He narrates the stories as he experienced them, making critical analysis and at the same time leaving the reader in no doubt as to his views. Introspection is an exercise which I firmly believe is an obligation for us Gambians, now more than ever before, if we are to truly understand our past, deal with our present, and chart a prosperous future for ourselves and generations yet unborn. If we are never to repeat the mistakes of the past. The book is a frank, detailed, and credible account of the author's experiences with victims, persons adversely mentioned in violation of the human rights, persons who were adversely mentioned in the TRRC, but suspected perpetrators, many of whom had actually confessed to their crimes during the TRRC, heads of institutions and other personnel. Alhaji brings the necessary background of his education and work experience to the position of the Director of Research Investigations of the Truth and Reconciliations Commission. As I turned through the pages, reading the book, I got the feeling I could trust the accuracy of every single word. Alhaji heard directly from witnesses from all sides, victims who spoke of their ordeals, the alleged perpetrators, and others whose evidence was relevant to the investigations, as well as experts. His skillful handling of the particularly those who are adversely mentioned is admirable. He was empathic and non-judgmental as they narrated their stories. In short, the role Alhaji and his team played was tremendous. We recognize them and the legal team led by Senior Counsel Esafal and the Commission as a whole for a job well done. Now back to the book. It points the thumb deliberately back at us, the people of this country, and for good reason too. In our case, blame cannot just be placed at the door of the perpetrators of these human rights violations. The people must take their share of the responsibility for their role in creating and nurturing the dictatorship in the process, and in the process perpetuating the ordeal of the Gambian people for 2 decades. From those who abused their powers to those who carried out orders from the top, those who arrested, detained, tortured, and killed, and disappeared, some of whom took pleasure in abusing their victims, those who informed on others in order to get them into trouble or to land a job, those who were indifferent to the blatant suffering of their own fellow human beings, those who blamed the victims for having brought their sufferings onto themselves, those who rejoiced at the knowledge or sight of others' suffering, those who sang praises of the dictator, those who denied and still deny that these violations could or ever took place in the Smiling Coast of Africa, those who chose to be silent and not do anything because they were afraid to get themselves or their family members in trouble or wanted to keep their jobs, those who belittled victims and called their testimonies fabrications, those who even mocked and remarked, "Dafkomoy." This book vindicates the victims. It therefore becomes imperative for all to acknowledge the role that the people played in creating the dictatorship. Denial is no option in the face of all the evidence. if we are to genuinely and purposely work towards reversing the trend, which sadly I don't believe we have even begun to do. To the reader, Mr. Chairman, the book serves as a permanent reminder of the sequence of key events, many of which ended up in confessions by state agents to torture, killings, and enforced disappearances over the period of 22 years. It slowly brings it home to the reader how the Gambia descended into dictatorship. It leaves the reader with no doubt that these events actually took place, no matter how horrendous and unbelievable, and no matter how much it contradicts the values we aspire to possess as decent human beings. It certainly does not fit our much celebrated slogan, the smiling coast of Africa. Certainly not at the time. As one of those who defended victims of human rights violations during much of this period, I had heard firsthand harrowing stories of many of them and seen for myself the injuries and scars they bore as evidence of torture, how they suffered and continued to suffer in silence to this very day. I also saw how the pain and suffering inflicted on them by agents of the former regime took its toll on their loved ones. It became imperative to retrace our steps as people learn from our mistakes in the hope of never repeating them again. We need to begin by changing our mindset, I believe. Just because one has a divergent view on how this country should be run does not make him an enemy of the state. Rather, it is an opportunity to engage in a healthy discourse on any particular issue or policy for the betterment of our nation. Surely, those who choose to speak their minds about how they believe the nation should be run are therefore merely exercising their constitutional right and should never be muzzled. To the victims who opted not to come forward, I have no doubt you will relate to the experiences narrated by the author and take comfort that many Gambians actually believe you. I know that many victims made the choice never to share their harrowing experiences. I had clients of my own whose evidence I thought was very, very pertinent in showing a different aspect of our troubles. For example, I had a client who, it was a civil case, employment matter, yet he was reported to the NIA, tortured to confess to stealing from the employer. So it wasn't always political, but that's what we had to live with. Now, I wish to reiterate the need for accountability, regardless of whether or not victims forgive their perpetrators. There has to be accountability for Gambia to move on and find peace in itself. It will act as a deterrent, if anything, and send a strong message that impunity is not an option. For without accountability, the Gambia has obligations spelled out in our constitution and other laws, as well as in regional and international treaties, which it must comply with. I am pleased that the government is taking steps to implement the TRRC recommendations to ensure accountability, bringing those who bear the greatest responsibilities to book. We just wish that this process could be speeded up. It is the only option we have that will lead to true reconciliation. We urge that it is done soonest. I wish to take the opportunity to remind the government of cases of enforced disappearances that are still pending unresolved, many of which were recounted in this book. These are missing persons whose whereabouts the TRRC, at the end of it, could not provide answers to. Neither could it identify those responsible for the disappearances. One such person was our client, Kanyuba Kanyi. Sadly, no lead whatsoever and his family continue to suffer, for they know nothing about the disappearances of their loved one, except for the fact that he was picked up by state agents from his home. Their families live with this pain every day and desperately need closure. They have waited far too long and hope that and any hopes they had of getting justice is fast fading away. The slogan, "Justice heals," is very apt here. I want to remember the brave souls who bore the brunt of the dictatorship, those who lost their lives, those who sacrificed themselves for the cause of liberating this country from the clutches of dictatorship, those who still experience physical and emotional pain from their ordeals, those who gave voice to the voiceless, those who labored quietly in the cause here and abroad, regional and international partners, my colleagues who were among a handful who risked their lives to defend those being persecuted, some of whom paid a heavy price and are still living with the suffering from the injuries they sustained. In short, those who stood on the right side of history when it really mattered. I salute you all. You will forever be remembered. Personally, I would like to thank Alhaji for documenting this great summary, which also creates in itself a historical record of the human rights violations during this 22-year period. The book is easy to pick up and is a riveting read. Alhaji, you indeed did a splendid job. Congratulations. I end with a befitting quote from the book, which I find to be true now more than ever before. It reads, "Until Gambians take a long, hard look in the proverbial mirror and wake up to the reality that the dictator, Yahya Jammeh, was not an aberration, that he is of us and made by us, we will continue to delude ourselves into thinking that we are better than the tyranny we created, nursed and nurtured, and unfortunately accepted for 22 years. To that end, accountability will be limited to criminal prosecutions, and the societal fissures that we ignore will remain the flashpoints that could potentially cause the country to implode someday. I humbly submit that every Gambian needs a copy of this book. I thank you all for your kind attention. Oh, okay. I didn't know that. I was not told. Okay. Yes. It is my singular honor to officially launch the book by Alhaji Saidi Barrow, "The Dictator is Us, My Truth Commission Journey." I didn't know we had to do that.
In the Mandinka term, Kuliolem, the name is now revealed. So Njundu, I thought this is the time that you're supposed to give in the dollars that you are earning at the NHRC, you know. You should be giving it out to the father of the, the show. Anyway, thank you so much, Nene. That was a wonderful statement. And I think the lessons are echoed for us to learn from this book. Most of us have seen the movie. Well, the movie is the TRRC that we were following up on TV. That's the movie. But a movie cannot be nice if you don't know what are behind the scene. So what is behind the scene is much more complex, much more difficult to make the movie a reality. So the book is all about everything that is unsaid on those, in those videos, in those testimonies. So certainly it will be a very good read. And I always say that if a good author writes and a good publisher publishes, then that is recipe for what? Not disaster at all. It's a recipe for a good benefit. I'm sure the Kiankas are happy. By the way, should I also remind all the Kiankas around that there is food and it should be served. So Adam, can you please help serve the food and the drinks so that those who have been eagerly waiting for the food before they hear anything else about the book launch would not be unhappy. So we will have the food served now for those who haven't had their lunch before they came. Otherwise, I know Nyundo and myself, we will have a battering from my Kianka cousins. Anyway, thank you so much indeed. A symbolic day indeed, a symbolic day, because all of us know that it is 18 years ago that one of our own, a journalist, was a victim of, that same regime. Deida Haidara was shot on the Sankunsila Road, and testimonies reveal those who really did it. And there is still a case going on, I think it's in Norway, trying to work it out to ensure that we get the whole story out. And at the same time, symbolic also in the sense that because we are celebrating an author, we need to also remind ourselves that we have lost another author and scholar, that is Dr. Jigan Senghor, who is laid to rest this morning. So this can be very symbolic. We didn't choose this out of expectation, but it became what we call a beautiful coincidence in a way, in one case, and probably a sad one in the other. But in all cases, this book is symbolic too, because everything said about this has a relationship to the people that we mentioned. We will, normally at this stage, that's where we ask, because as I said, when the launching is done, when the launch is done, we now ask people to buy the book. Because in Ngente, once the name is revealed, the guy said, okay, Johelen Dara, Dr. Kabir. No. So now it is the time for the pledges. And I have been promised by some here, my former bosses, that this is the day they are going to buy so many books that I will be surprised. So now, I'm now inviting pledges. They are open. And I don't want anybody pledging less than 5 books. Can I start calling names? So who will be the first to pledge to buy? I know you have been buying one book, that's fine. We now want pledges that are going to buy in large numbers. Okay, thank you very much, Nene.
I pledge 10.
MashaAllah. 10 book is pledged by Nene Cham. So, Elsa, you need to write that down. Nene Cham, 10 books pledged. That's a good book. So now that pledge is the one that is crossing the line. Anything above is good. Anything above that, oh, good, that's another 10. We will finish with the big bosses. So who is pledging?
Well, I'll give the name to Allah because it's
No, I'm the publisher. You need to I'm the one selling it. You don't give it to Allah.
okay. Just say it's fine.
Seku.
Yes.
Seku.
10.
Seku.
Seven Jai.
Okay.
Yes.
So what Seku? Seku Jabi 10. 10 books. Okay, that's good. Yes, you want to pledge? No. Oh. All right. Any other pledge? So if you get maybe 10 of those, we can move on. 10 of those pledges. Any other? Oh, that's great. Thank you. Sol? Sol Mega. Sol Mega is pledging for 5 books. Okay, maybe Sol, we will coach you to take another 5 later, but it's good. We will not 5 at the moment. All right, don't be afraid to pledge, please. So you can pledge for books if you have.
I've already bought some.
Okay.
I will pledge 5 on top of what I bought. I'll pledge 5.
Okay.
For the National Human Rights Commission, I'll buy. Although we already have bought some in advance.
Well, I really made my boss suffer. He's my former boss. So I made him buy and buy and buy so many books, and now he's playing in row 5. So thank you. We recognize that. That's good. Thank you so much indeed. Thank you. So Emmanuel Juve, 5 copies. Esa, Emmanuel Juve, 5 copies.
Also 25 for
For Fanta Can. Okay. Okay, Fanta Can, right? So put Fanta Can, 5 books, please. Thank you so much indeed. It's good to support the victims. All right, do we have any other pledge? Oh, thank you. Yusuf Ajajusi. Okay, note Yusuf Ajajusi, 2 books. Now, all those pledging, we want you to give the money now before you leave. Is that possible? We don't want the pledge and disappear. We want the money. Any other pledge? That's it? Okay, Mr.
I'm pledging 5 to be donated to the victim center.
Okay, Mr. Njai, Babukan Njai pledging 5 books to be donated to the victim center. Thank you so much indeed. I'm sure that will be a good read for the victim center. Is that all? Okay, if you want, we can close it there, but if you still have more pledges, it's most welcome. All right, thank you very much. Remember, you can sit by the book. It's at $1,400 and available in stock at the moment, but running out very, very fast. All right, thank you indeed. We will take a quick break while the lunch is being served and invite Killer Ace. Is Killer Ace in the, I think I saw Killer Ace around. Where is Killer Ace? So Killer Ace is also, as you know, another victim of the previous regime for most of his lyrics and his music. So he had to leave the country until the regime changed. So if Killer Ace is around, we can invite him to take the floor and entertain us with one sound, as they call it. All right, okay, well, as we try to sort out that issue, we will probably, I want to recognize, I know a lot of us have some relationship with the author, but I would like to give 2 singular people an opportunity to say a few words about the author. One of them is his own brother. He's called Mr. Lamid Barrow, who is with us. And the other one is Babu Kanjai. So, Mr. Lamid Barrow, kindly stand up so they all recognize you to be the elder brother of Alaji Saidi Barrow. Please. Thank you very much. So I can invite you to say a word or 2 if you are willing to do so. Killer is, okay, I'm inviting someone to take the floor and I'll get you on next. Please don't be far away. Please, sir. You can stand there. You can stand here. If you want to stand there, you can stand there. Yeah, if you want.
Any language? Okay. Yeah, let me just say Mandinka is better. Okay. I would like to speak my original language, that's Mandinka, because my English is not so good, which I believe some of you will understand it or you'll be translated by those who can speak good Mandinka. I'm very sorry for that, those who can understand Mandinka anyway. I will just start saying, Alhamdulillah, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alamin. Man setalla tendo kola. Besalla kila sallallahu ta'ala alaihi wasallam. Kadua walla kanyama dan duala na alfa floliye men keta ndenin alaji barola sababu de dunia kono jam ala yake bi ibe ñaato fo altara si am fema kala jaw so na ndiye ni bellum ala kala ken do de malluti mbantala dan la wala ba inshallah ka jama fanan betentu ka bo chairman wala anala haytebul mol baro kunda family fanan be tola men bi jang ani men di jang alala tedulum balamu bayri nina mo wuluta hanni ala malum de silakilin kam bar ala yake ake damoti membe do ko la jamaaye o mo altan du balati ko do alaji do mo le kono inshallah taala teddu barakunda be tola inshallah kabe fanan be kelin ton don ten do atel men yalla hajuru bula kane dam kumandirola walla kane dam kulliola ko min alfaya fa nyamen men keta kiamanoti nemma ne ko sa fo kulliola ko kana bu ko nyum kulli wo fana mo ala ten do balade inshallah kalbe kelin konton kal jay al tola barakunda family tola birin ko mo fo wolde ala yito yan do gol mo ko ngafa yan bakele fakele oto o kabala nay ni sodo bi kana jan ka mabe family tola o mo farlo nyan tolo mo nyanda menkela oto kadiya mo fana sudale nyawnya ka jama teddo kabilo tola walla mo tola o fana mo farlo tin kan oto kumoɗo jam fala bayri si o meeɗa anndo ngalon ko malal ɓe si aɗen ne si kumo bala jam ɗon gondanda baake ngal tala teddo baake ala baraka
Thank you very much for a good summary of his speech. We just want to explain, started by explaining gratitude to God. And also thank Allah for the journey that Alhaji Saidi Baro had to go through to this level. For them, it's a blessing.
When he's pledging for 10 books.
Oh, okay. Okay, and then he also welcomes the lunch, which which is translated as Kulio, which is naming ceremony, as I said, of the book. And then he expressed the fact that he and Alhaji Saidi Baro are of the same parents, and that for them this occasion is a very significant one to the family, thanking everybody for coming and honoring the case and then shortening the speech there. So, Andim Barabake, Alhaji Lamin Baro, Ilakumol Betiata Bake. By the way, we have another pledge from Coach Pasamba Jau. Right, please. Coach Pasamba Jau is pledging for 10 books. Thank you very much. He is online. He's following us online. We forgot that this is being streamed live online. We didn't mention that earlier. Thank you so much indeed. Before we call Mr. Jai, maybe we'll now invite Killer Ace to lighten the mood while my Kianka cousins are munching something that they have been given. So Killer Ace, please, the floor is yours.
Special love to everybody in the building. Thanks for supporting the cause. Thanks for supporting the movement. The song I'm about to start is called The Revolution Starts Now, because I believe the dictator is in us, and it's only us who can bring change. So the song is relevant to the book title. DJ, drop that. Yeah. Everybody, what's up? Volume, please. Yeah, the revolution starts now. Yeah, the revolution starts now. Get up, stand up, and play your part now. The revolution starts within, deep in your heart now. Yeah, the revolution starts now. Let's go, everybody. Yeah, the revolution starts now. I want to hear y'all. Get up, stand up, and play your part now. The revolution starts within, deep in your heart now. Let's go, everybody. Yeah, the revolution starts now. Nigga, what in? I can't hear nothing. Nigga, what in it? Get up, stand up, and play your part now. The revolution starts within, deep in your heart now. Yo, yeah, let's change the way we treat each other. Believe it or not, we really need each other. And when one is hungry, come on, let's feed each other. And when one is sick, we can heal each other. With the knowledge and wisdom, yo, we can teach each other. Yo, see your sister, and hear your brother. Then humble down, watch your support, but then you free no brother. We all trapped up in the system, but we can feed each other. Suko defu, dina yaga di meji. Dun am sulpat si reo wite dun musa nan si meomi. Why suko defe, ñu ñëpp dinañ si njëriñoo. Man suma chiko bi, il faut ma tel ma wé chiko. Doomu jàngu, yo put ko yóbbu sëriñ. No, the revolution starts now. I love you everybody, I'm Killer ACE. And last but not least, DJ, could you regulate my mic and the sound so I can give the audience the best that I can give? So the next song, everybody knows what it's going to be dropping. This is for everybody that was in the struggle. We all played our part collectively. Some went into exile, some were arrested, some were murdered. Why batay lu fi nekkon mo fi nekk batay. Then for one day, then boko si gete gi, why batay nekkon di nan si mew mi. So drop that, my brother. Ku boko si gete gi. Nan si mew mi. Ku boko si dëkk bi. War nga am sa baat si réew mi. Hands in the air, everybody. 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 Ku bokk si gerte gi naan si meew mi. Ku bokk si dëkk bi war ngay am baat si réew mi Gambia. Ku bokk si gerte gi naan si meew mi. Ku bokk si dëkk bi war ngay am baat si réew mi. Dégguma leen ku bokk si gerte gi. Ku bokk si dëkk bi war ngay am baat si réew mi. Dégguma leen ku bokk si gerte gi. Ku bokk si dëkk bi. Ku bokk si gerte gi nekk si gerte gi war ngay naan si meew mi. Ku bokk si dëkk bi nekk si dëkk bi war a am baat si réew mi yeah ful dëkk yow ñu ne kenn du wax du imam du artist du journalist mais lu tax we can't speak what's on our mind. Nga wax lu nekk sa mind, all of a sudden it's a crime. You can't talk about the injustices going on and the police brutality, which is so wrong. You can't talk about the corruption. I swear the flow goes on. Sur xaalis yu ñooy tasaare, oh it's so wrong. Ku bokk si gerte gi, ku bokk si dëkk bi. Jërë ngeen jëf Gambia. I'm Killer Ace. I'm a rapper that uses my music for social struggle. And I just want to thank Alaji for inviting me, for believing in my art, and for believing in my talent. We are all victims one way or another, and we all should support each other. God bless Gambia.
1 minute.
Thank you, Killer Ace. Words of power. We're not going to stay more than 20 minutes any more, so please be patient. We're almost done. We've done the most important elements of it, one or two more important things, and we are done. But before that, before we introduce the author, who will be making a statement, we would like to invite Mr. Babacar Njie. Mr. Babacar Njie also plays an important role in the life of the author, and he would like to make a 2-minute statement. Mr. Njie, thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Actually, Mr. Jallo, this is an ambush. I wanted to be at the background and start taking my retirement, but it seems I cannot. Ladies and gentlemen, I just want to say some few remarks about the book and a little about Alaji Barrow, who is a member of my family as well. Now, the dictator is us. Why us? Just want to remind Gambians that it is we who can make Gambia, and it is our lack of commitment to make Gambia that could give us the dictator that we may have again or that we had before. It is as if most Gambians would be more concerned in their own daily lives and maybe those of their families, but what happens next doesn't concern them. And I think we should all learn that is a very dangerous trend to build a nation. I was once told by a senior elder in Banjul who has passed away, and this is more than 2 decades ago. Now, he was one of the elders of Banjul, and in the early days of the coup, he was among the Banjul elders who went to visit Yaya Jammeh. After that first visit, a few days ago, I went and visited him. I was at that time working at the GPTC. And what he told me, this was in the early days when Yaya Jammeh's watchwords were transparency, accountability, and there was a third one, and probity. Yeah. In those early days, these were his watchwords. And this senior Banjul elder told me, he said, Njai? I said, yes, sir. He said, let me tell you one thing. He said, this boy, he said, Halebi Magis, let me tell you, a day will come when no Gambian will escape from him. And I said, but why? He said, look, he said, if you break no law, you do not break any law, and you do not cause any wrong, you should be at peace. I said, yes, that's true. But he said, a day will come in this country with this boy in power, no Gambian will be at peace. And moving on, that is exactly what happened in this country. There was no Gambian who sincerely could say that I was not touched one way or the other by the brutality of Yaya Jammeh. So let it be our concern to take part in what decides our future as Gambians and make sure that we steer this country in the right direction. So much for the dictator is us. I want to say a few words about my friend and brother, Alaji Barrow. We met some few years ago after he has also some close bond with my younger brother, Cherno Njai. And that relationship even superseded my relationship with him, I dare say, even superseded with that of Cherno, because we have lived together. He is a guy whom I could say dedicated his life to serve humanity and justice. He has virtually gave it all to try to bring Gambia to the right track. He has made commendable sacrifices, details of which I need not go through. But I want to use this opportunity to say, Alaji, thank you very much for being a good citizen. Thank you very much for being a good brother, and we wish you all the best. I would also want to use this opportunity to thank your wife, Horeja Balagay, for taking good care of you. I thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Njai. he has facilitated my task to introduce the author before I invite him. Basically, the first thing that comes to mind when I want to introduce Alhaji Saidi Barrow is Nyundo Drame. I'm sorry, but Alhaji, I cannot help it. Here are two excellent writers who have been amusing most of us who love reading excellent write-ups on Facebook. You know, they say normally Facebook is not an interesting thing for many of us, but people like us are curious literary guys, so we keep probing and looking into certain areas, and we've discovered there are few good writers on Facebook, and sometimes they throw in a sentence or two, like Baba Gale Jallow will do, and that will have what we call a pregnant meaning. You can interpret it in many ways. But you have those who can write some little bit of satire, a little bit of humor, a little bit of jokes, but they write so well that you really love to read their works. And this is Mama Jig, and I don't know, they are not calling Jundu his nickname, but Jundu Drame. So I will leave that to Alhaji Saidi Barrow. But you know, if you want to know who Alhaji Saidi Barrow is, briefly, he is a veteran of the US Army who holds a BSc in Criminal Justice from Tennessee State University and a Master of Arts in National Security Studies from the American Military University in Charlestown, West Virginia. Having served for over a decade with the US military, where he rose to the rank of captain before resigning in January of 2014 with an honorable discharge, Barrow held various responsibilities in the military, including victim advocate. Now, during his time in the military, that is US military, his duties included conducting investigations through interviews, gathering facts, retrieving records, analyzing information, and writing reports and recommendations. He had been to various leadership schools in the US military and holds diplomas in various courses. After leaving the military, he also worked as an investigator and security consultant for security organizations in the US and as a short-term contract field investigator in parts of Africa. I think he still does, even discreetly. So I keep teasing him that sometimes the dollar has to fall our way, you know, in Badibu, Sue. He was the Director of Research and Investigations for the Gambia Truth, Reconciliation and Reparations Commission. And now, as I said, he's now a freelancer, a happy father. From time to time, I hear him taking good care of the child when I call and say, no, I will not receive your call because the baby is sleeping. But thank you very much. He's a good husband, a good father most certainly, and I'm sure our sister Horeja is watching. So this is the author of The Dictator Is Us, and I now invite him to make his statement. Thank you.
Thank you, Cherno. Thank you, my sisters, for agreeing to come here. This is a table that not everyone is brave enough to sit down on. So thank you for coming, Nene, and thank you, my baby sister, Ndaitafa. I appreciate you guys being here. Thank you to Killer Ace for the entertainment, and thank you to Pabobo Jabate. These were not individuals chosen by accident. They were chosen because they chose to stand for the nation when other musicians chose to praise the dictator to make more money. They chose to be different, and that's why I invited them here. Everyone that's present here, I'm grateful for your support. I have lots of big brothers here. I don't want to start mentioning names because there are names mentioned here, but lots of big brothers here who have inspired me in several ways over several years and over time. This is a book I wish I never had to write. It was fate that walked me into this book. I wish it was fiction. The stories, the harrowing stories that you would read in this book, I wish they were not true. I wish I didn't have to meet victims. I wish I never had to sit down with rape victims or sit down with individuals whose fathers have been disappeared. I wish that wasn't the case. And I wish that some of us did not ever have the need to put our lives on the line for the people. But the reality is, our little Gambia lost whatever innocence it had decades ago. Our brothers and sisters were murdered, raped, and humiliated, and our freedom was in the hands of one man and his mandarins. Sadly, when the time for reckoning came in 2017, we sacrificed accountability at the altar of political expediency. We chose the convenience of politics over accountability. This book is inspired by that ugly Gambia we don't want to see or hear about, because after all, there are few things as comforting as denial. But as comforting as denial can be, it is even much more dangerous to live in denial. In writing this book, I am also grateful to a lot of people who, in one way or another, helped me in building the better side of the person that I am trying to be on a daily basis. Of all the people, I remain eternally grateful to my dear mother of blessed memory, Fanta Sisao, and my father of blessed memory, Afang Mamadi Baro. I owe them credit for most of what is good about me today. May their souls and the souls of our parents reside in Jannah. I also pray for the souls of my beloved brothers, Njaga Jang, Lamin Sane, and Alaji Jajanyas. May their sacrifice continue to inspire all freedom-loving persons. I want to say thank you to my older brother, Lamin Barrow, for all that he's done for me in ensuring that I go to school, get the Western education, and helping to send me to America, where I got to realize some of my dreams. My family in Wulle Jakunda, Sandu Kurau, Nyani Karantaba, Fuladu Chakunda, and notably, and most importantly, my family from Kiankayaf, I am eternally grateful for all the support that you've given me and my parents. To the families that we lived with at Old Perseverance in Banjul, my old neighborhoods in Bundunkakunda and Latikunda Sabiji, my schoolmates at Serakunda Primary School, to the people of my beloved Basse, where I came of age, schoolmates and classmates at Nasir Ahmadiyya High School, especially the 1992 batch, I am because in some way every one of you contributed to the person that I am becoming. For my TRRC journey, I must start with my big brother, sometimes enemy, Baba Gala Jallow. He led the way. He was the one that was instrumental in my hiring. But before I get to Baba Gala, let me also start with my big brother, Chernoba, who is not here. He lives in Minnesota, who, having sensed my desire to contribute to the cause of the victims, planted in me the idea of working with the victims of the Jame tyranny. Cherno and our wife, Aminata Jane, in so many ways and on so many levels, are giants of goodness to me, and I will forever be grateful to them. I'm also grateful for the love and support of my family members in Bakarikunda, in Jakunda, particularly my uncle Ansumana Baro, who is in Italy, for all his advice, and the head of our family, my uncle Mauda Baro. I'm also eternally grateful for the love, kindness, and support of my Njayan family, primarily Koto Babu Kanjai and Mami Sen, who have shown me that kindness and love still exists in this world. I live with them to this day. Whenever I visit Gambia, if I'm not with my family, I never go to my home, I go to their home. No questions asked, I stay for as long as I need to, and do whatever it is that I need to. Mommy, if you don't mind, please. I know you would hate this, but Tahawal, please. Thank you, thank you. Yes, so Cherno Njai and his brothers, all of them, my big brother here, Alaji Njai from Bundung, he was the one that I met way back in 2000. And he is the one that inspired me to join the military. He was also a soldier in the United States military. Alaji, stand up, please. My brothers from Bundung Moor, Mbemba Sise, who is not here with me, of Bundung, Mohamed Cole from Dipakunda, Lamin Fofana, aka Zof from Farafenye, Siga Jain. I thank all of you for your friendship and your brotherhood to me. And back to the TRRC, Dr. Baba Gala Jallow, I am grateful to you. You opened the doors of the TRRC for me. and remained faithful to me when many did not trust in your judgment. I am eternally grateful, sir. I hate to say that, though. Musubakoto Sao, who is not here with us, she was my immediate supervisor. She's my mom. I could not have dreamt of a better immediate boss than Musubakoto Sao. Mansour Diop, who was my deputy at the TRRC. Mansour made sure that I stayed out of trouble and that everything that I did was within legal realms. So Mansour, I am eternally grateful to you. Thank you for your brotherhood and thank you for all the assistance. The team at the TRRC, Abdul Mane, I understand is here. My older, younger brother, Ibrahim Ayabo, and his team, his partner in crime, Alpha Baji, and their whole team, Momodou Ba, Sana Bajo, all of them who ensured that we were able to do the job the way we needed to do it. The commissioners of the TRRC, led by the wonderful Dr. Lamin Sise, my mommy, Auntie Adelaide, my aunts, Ma Nyima Bojang and Amisamba, my own personal Badibunka commissioner, Kinte. Jamme Sise, the one I call Domor Laba, my uncles, Bishop Odiko, Imam C, Imam Jallo, and my Toma, Anangulu Jones, and my uncle, Mustafaka. I am grateful to all of you. The legal team led by Esa Fal, and of course my guardian angel, Horaja Balagay, my friend Sagar Jahate, and my bestie, Mariama Singate. Thank you for putting up with me and my team. The psychosocial team, including Jackie, Mariama Jobate, Ngaima Sise, Victims Unit, Ibu Fainjai, Khadija Tukuyate, Finance Unit, HR Unit, Mamderi Toure and team, my niece Hadi Jallo, my daughters at Youth and Children, Mariama Cham and Bubakar Sambu, Women's Anti-Yadi, Chawa, and Sibo for feeding us. These are the people that worked in the restaurant and ensured that we had food every day. The drivers, Mortune, Koto Idi, and all of them, I'm grateful to them. I also want to thank Abubakar Batambedu, the former Minister of Justice, for all his work in setting up this TRRC. I would not have had a book to write if there was no TRRC, and I doubt there would have been a TRRC if Batambedu didn't create one. Importantly, I want to thank all the victims, particularly the hundreds that shared their stories with me before, during, and after the TRRC. Witnesses who opened up to us and helped us along the way, I am grateful to. Shorty Jamme, thank you for everything. Joey Goswell, Bamba Mas, RSM Babu Karjeng, Momodou Gassama, Momodou Buhari Gassama, Madi Jobate, Jegan Gray Johnson, Ibrahim Chongan, my own big brother. You know what you've done for me. You know the road we traveled, and I thank every single one of you for that road. Many others also took their time to go through this book and offer suggestions, and I'm grateful to all of them. My big brother Saul Seidikan, Hamad Omar Sala, Momodou Ndaw, my younger brothers Natamas, Omar Toure, and Sanasar, all took their time to go through the manuscript in its very rudimentary form and share their thoughts. To my publishers, Global Hands, led by Professor Momodou Sala and Dr. Cherno Omar Bari, I'm grateful that you took a chance on me, and to all the journalists helping to promote the book, I am grateful to you, particularly Peter Gomez. If you here, I am eternally grateful to you, sir. This book would not have been possible without the guidance and mentorship of one individual, and that is Fode Samate. Fode is probably the best thinker and writer that I know alive today. And I'm not saying that with any exaggeration whatsoever. I know he has books. I'm trying to push him to get them out into the open, and I'm doing everything. But when those books hit, one day you would sit down and say, you know what, Alaji did tell us that this guy is the best that's out there today. And I say that with no hesitation whatsoever. Fode, if you are watching, I am eternally, eternally grateful. He must have read this book at least 10 times over to help me get it to where it is today. So Fode, I thank you from the bottom of my heart. And I've already said thank you to Horaja Balagay, but only a foolish man would thank his wife when he can do so 1 billion times. So you have to bear with me as I thank my wife over and over and over. And in case you don't know my wife, she's my biggest critic. We stay arguing in the house all day, every day. If you know me, you know I like Defante. And she's the quiet one. So I'm always provoking and starting a debate. So a street lawyer against a seasoned lawyer You already know how those arguments go, but I hold my own. She's my biggest critic, my best friend. She's my wife. I call her my life, my halo, my support, and my foundation. None of this would have been possible at all in any way whatsoever without her. Even coming here, I said, I'm not going to Gambia to launch no book. What's the point in that? She insisted that I have to come and launch this book here in the Gambia. So, Horaja, thank you so much. And to my Balagay family, represented by my sister here, Yafa, I'm not going to ask her to stand up because when this is over, I would get in trouble. So I'm not going to ask her to stand up. But just, she's here representing the Balagay family, and especially my mommy Bella and Uncle Bala. I'm grateful to all of you for accepting me in your family. To all of you present here today, I love you all. I am grateful for your company. To all my Kiang brothers, uncles, aunts, sisters, and cousins, I love you all, and I'm grateful to all of you. Lastly, you saved the best for the least important. And the least important here would be my Badibunkas. To all my Badibunkas, from the depth of my heart, I say a big thank you. You have accepted and embraced me, and I love all of you. And to my number one enemy in the whole wide world, the person that I love the most but hate the most as well, Njundu Drame, I say thank you, sir. And Njundu, extend my regards to your beautiful wife, Nadinding, as well, please. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for coming. I appreciate you guys. Thank you so much, and look forward to meeting every one of you here. Thank you. Thank you. Buffet.
Thank you. Commissioner Drame, Yundu. You know, I think we got him right there. You know, both of us are from Badibu. He said he's saving the last for the least important. If he had been doing that, Horaja would not have come last, right? So if Horaja came last, then we are the most important. Thank you anyway. Thank you very much. It's always nice and exciting to hear Alaji and also read his works. But now we are at the end. He did mention, probably he didn't reiterate it clearly here, that all the proceeds of his book is going to the victims. So we will therefore call a representative of the Victim Center to come and make a vote of thanks. So I hope that they have already got a representative of the Victim Center. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm really honored to stand here today to give a vote of thanks on behalf of the Victim Center. My name is Jane Gomez, and the Communications Specialist for the Gambia Center for Victims of Human Rights. I am very lucky to have met Uncle Alaji through Starfish International, and he has been such an inspiration. He has been such a support system as well, especially when it comes to pushing young people to be their better selves and to do better for and stand for the nation as well. And he can only do that by leading by example, and he has done that in so many ways. And the manifestation today is the book that is being launched today that gathered all of us. When we were coming, Mariama Cham and I were like, wow, there are so many cars in this place. And I was like, have you met Alaji Barrow? You know, but that is the purpose of the man sitting here today launching this book. And this book couldn't have come at a better time as well, because all of us, in one way or the other, enabled dictatorship in our country. When Yahya Jammeh became president, I was still a little girl. I have no idea what was going on in this country. But through the years and through my learning and through my reading, I've seen how he was enabled to become the dictator that he was. And through praise singing, through licking of his toes, because everybody wants to be identified with him, you know, the defendant of the wrongs that he was doing, including our own, you know, institutional leaders, religious leaders, enabling him to have the power that he gathered to be able to do the things that he did in this country. So this is a lesson for us. It is a lesson for us to learn, especially for us young people. We stand as advocates, we stand as defenders of justice, we stand as advocates for victims that were wrongly tortured, accused, disappeared, and stuff like that. It is a learning point for us to stand firm, to know that our actions will always produce a consequence. And those consequences can be very dear to our own very nature as human beings. This book paints a picture for us to look back and know that what we've seen in the past, we should not repeat it in the future, thereby promoting the Never Again campaign, the Never Again slogan that happened, that is going on through the findings of the TRRC. So I want to say in this point, thank you very much, Uncle Alaji, for painting a picture for us. Thank you for showing us the way, because this book is going to be a learning point for generations to come, to know that this was what happened, and this is not going to happen if we stand firm and defend our right. So I also want to thank the organizers of this book launch. Thank you to the Chief Master of Ceremony, to all of you that have come today to attend or to witness the book launch. Thank you very much. The media that is present here today as well, we say thank you for always reaching out, because the point of for us not supporting dictatorship is right here, right now. Media was targeted, politicians were targeted, every single family in this country was targeted, and in one way or the other, we are coming out of it. And the hope is there for us because of people like Alaji Barrow. And the victims too. Your stories are continually told, and therefore justice is on the way. Even though the times are dark right now, but there is sunshine at the end of the tunnel. So I just want us to keep having hope. People that are, my message this evening before I close, is people that are repeating the same actions that enable Jammeh to control so much power, to infiltrate the systems. Those same people that are doing the same things today to enable dictatorship in this country, I just want to let you know that we are watching you, and we're going to talk about you, and we're going to expose you, no matter how long it takes. So let's be careful. Let's restrain ourselves from licking the boots of people who are doing wrong, to purport evil in this nation. Thank you very much, and thank you for the honor. Yes.
That was quite the point, really, and very well said. Thank you so much for that message. And it is very touching, too, to hear that. By the way, the Alaji is not only supposed to be the one. If there is anybody who needs to support the victims, I think it's open. I think all of us are victims in one way, but remember, if you don't help your neighbor, tomorrow you never know what will happen. So let's all support in many other ways, also by ensuring dictatorship doesn't happen again. So the never again should continue to be a mantra, and Dr. Baba Jallow, they have already got their association working, and in case you need to know more about it, please you can contact them. The never again flag should fly high, and we should believe in it and act on it. Thank you very much. I just want to give you two quick announcements. The first is that the author is available to autograph books for those who have bought their books and want it autographed. So he will be at the back in one of the corridors there. And the second thing, those who have pledged, please kindly give us your contact details so we can continue to contact you and ensure that we get the books to you and also you pay. He's a fuller man now, he's selling the books, be careful. On that note, thank you so much. You are all thanked for coming, and I will now declare the session closed. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.